Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Mary Cook. I am the ACT coordinator for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Thank you for joining us on this rainy and cold Thursday evening. We are happy to have you. Tonight is all about helping parents understand what is going on with the ACT, what their students need to know, and how we can support you as you support them. Uh, we're going to have two presenters tonight. The first one is Nivea Atwood, who you just heard. She is here from ACT, and she'll give you a little bit of her background. Once she is done, then I will be speaking to you about what Metro Nashville has available. I'm going to let you know that we have almost 170 people signed up for the presentation. The people coming represent both schools within the Metro Nashville public school system, our charter schools, private schools, even some people from outside of the area. So those of you who are not part of the district managed schools, meaning our traditional public schools like Hillsborough, Hillwood, Overton, Maplewood, those schools, some of these resources that I talk about myself may not be available to your students. Everything Nivea talks about does apply to your students. So just know that there may be some differences depending upon where your student attends. As we go through this, you are welcome to have your camera off or on. I do ask that you have your microphones muted. Then that way, whatever is going on in your world can just happen because we know we're all at home and life happens, but then it won't impact the presentation in any way. However, if you have questions, and we do have some spots built in for questions, please either feel free to type your questions into the chat or come off from mute and ask your questions. Sometimes it's easier to do that rather than trying to type everything out into the chat, whichever you're most comfortable doing. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and hand the platform over to Nivea and let her take the lead. Oh, one other thing. We have the schedule to go until about 7 o'clock. If we may end early, it may not take the full hour and a half. If so, that's terrific. You get some time to go ahead and do whatever it is that you need to do. Do know that if you need to get up and take care of some business, we are recording this, and we will place the link to the recording on the ACT website, the page on the Metro website, the ACT page on the Metro website, so you can go back and revisit anything that you may have missed. Now, with that, Nivea, it is now your show. Other than we cannot hear you.
Yes, so I was still muted. So hi everyone, as Mary said, my name is Nivea Serrano Atwood, and I am a senior account executive for ACT. I work exclusively with the state of Tennessee. I am also a proud Metro Nashville Public Schools graduate. I graduated from Antioch High School way back in the day, so a shout out to any of the Antioch Bears that are out there. I am going to put on my video as I share my screen. All right, so as you just heard me say, I'm a proud MNPS graduate. Before working for ACT, and I've only been working for ACT about 3 years. So before then, I was in public education for 21 years, 14 years as a high school English teacher. I taught freshman English. I absolutely loved their energy. And then after that, I was a high school assistant principal for 7 years, as well as our school's test coordinator. And I was also in charge of our school data. But more importantly than that, I am a proud mom and wife. I just got married last May. You'll see a picture here of my son. He is a college freshman. So when I go over this information, I'm going over it not as someone who represents ACT exclusively, but also as a parent who has been there and done that. I am also the proud mom of my beautiful bonus daughter. She is in the 4th grade, so I'm going to be starting that journey all over again with her. And in the picture at the top, I am also a Tennessee Promise mentor. I have been a mentor now for about 7 years. You can see a picture of me. This is pre-pandemic with some of my mentees. And what that means is that every spring, I get anywhere from 5 to 10 seniors who are planning on going to a community college or to a TCAT, and I help them navigate that college going process so that they have a smooth transition, and I stay with them through their freshman year of college. So with that, let's get to our agenda. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the ACT test. What is the definition of college readiness? And what are those benchmarks? So as a student, how do I know if I am college ready? How to interpret my score report? How the scores are used. It's used for more than just college admission, because as we know, some colleges accept it for admission and some do not. Then I'm going to stop for Q&A. So any questions that you may have over the topics that I just covered. Then we will continue with my ACT, test prep options. Then we will end with resources, national test dates, what are those fees, fee waivers, student and parent webpage, and social media to stay connected. And then another Q&A session based on the topics I went over in the second half, plus any questions you have that I did not cover. So let's start very basic. When I was a high school assistant principal, I was in charge of ACT score improvement, helping our kids. So I created a presentation. I would go into every English classroom to talk to the kids. And one of the questions that I asked the kids, and I'll ask it of you, and I'm going to ask it as if you were the juniors or the seniors. And I asked them, well, what kind of a test is the ACT anyway? Is it an IQ test, a test of your smarts? Is it an aptitude test, testing your natural ability? Or is it an achievement test, that what you learn in school will prepare you for the ACT? The answer is C, it's an achievement test. And I was surprised, I'd almost have a 50-50 there, right? A lot of kids thinking that it was an aptitude test or an IQ test. And so just really dispelling that myth for them and letting them know that, hey, that what you learn in school will prepare you for the ACT. So again, helping with that growth mindset that if you put in the work, that you are going to see the results. So a brief overview of the ACT test. As you can see, there are 5 tests. English, math, reading, and science. And that is in fact the exact order that students would take the test. They would take English and math, take a 15-minute break, come back, and finish up with reading and science. The 5th test is optional, and that is writing. That is 1 essay, 40 minutes to write that essay. So as far as whether or not a student needs the writing portion, that depends on the college that he or she decides to go to. Now, for the state testing events that the Department of Education pays for, the spring test administration and the fall senior retake, that ACT test does not include writing. So for those 2 state testing events, your students will only take the first 4. English has 75 questions and they have 45 minutes. Math, 60-60. Reading and science are both 40 questions at 35 minutes. So one of the things that I point out to the students is, hey, you know what? Yes, for the test to prepare, part of it is content knowledge, maybe refreshing your memory on some of that math, some of those English grammar rules. But as we can see, since it is a time test, it's also having those pacing strategies as well. So what does it mean to be college ready anyway? What is that definition? Well, before I get into the definition, the first thing I want to point out is that the word college, that definition has expanded. A lot of times people think of the traditional four-year college, and it's not so. So now the definition of college includes community college, those 2-year colleges. It also includes trade school. Trade school is college. And it also includes those TCATs, our technical schools. So again, those post-secondary institutions, that definition has expanded. So what is the definition? How do I know if I'm college ready? What does that mean? All it means is that I have the knowledge and the skills to enroll in and be successful in those first-year credit-bearing courses in college without the need for remediation. Now in Tennessee, those college remedial classes are called learning support classes. So I am college ready if I'm able to go right into those first year college courses with no need for learning support classes. That's college ready. So how do I know, by taking this ACT test, how do I know if I am college ready? So what you're going to see here in the left column is the typical first year college courses paired with a section of the ACT test. Then you're going to see the benchmark. So if I meet or exceed that benchmark, then I am college ready. These benchmarks also have a predictive quality to it. It's predicting that, students would have a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher, or about a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in these corresponding first year college courses. So for example, the typical first year college course is English Comp. Pair that with the English section of the test, and if I score at least an 18 or higher in English, I am college ready. No remedial class for me for English. College algebra paired with math, that benchmark is a 22. The social sciences is paired with the reading section of the test. You notice it's not the English courses, it's the social science courses such as US history is paired with reading. And then you can see that, I'm not sure what just happened here. Start over. There we go. So you see the benchmark for reading is a 22, and then biology, that benchmark is a 23. So let's take a look at the score report. The score report is going to give you college readiness scores that we just discussed, but it also gives your students feedback on career readiness as well. So here's an example of a score report. At the top, of course, are all the scores. Now, if you notice, the composite score of 21 is in the navy box. That, of course, is the first score that people go to. What's my composite? Yes, a 21. I'm going to get that Tennessee Hope Scholarship. And then they look at their individual scores. So let's kind of just look at that first row straight across, and then we'll look at the columns. So that 21 composite, if you notice, student made a 19 in math, 18 in science, and then you notice it says STEM. So there's a STEM score as well. Now that 19 STEM score is an average of your students' math and science score. So that's where that 19 comes from. And if you'll notice, we try to use the color system there to show you. So if you notice, STEM is in green, and if you notice, math and science is also underlined in green to just kind of show you that correlation. Now, if you look in the STEM column and just have your eyes travel downward, you're going to see a purple bubble. And in that purple bubble is a 26. That is the benchmark for STEM. So if your student is going into and majoring in those upper level science classes such as chemistry and physics, they're wanting to enroll in an engineering program, etc. So they're really going to want to look at their STEM score for that. And now we keep traveling back to the top. We see English is a 24, reading a 23. This particular student happened to take the writing. You see that student score there. If you notice, it says the writing test scores range from 2 to 12. I want anyone to go, oh my goodness, I see that 8 and the student did terribly. Well, no, considering that the range is up to 12 and 8 is pretty good. And then if you notice, ELA is in blue. And again, notice that the blue is underlined for English reading and writing. Now, since the student has scores in all three, then the student will get an ELA score. Now, have your eyes travel downward in that column, you're going to see the purple bubble. Now it says 20. So that is the ELA benchmark of 20. Now, I will tell you, if the student does not take writing, then the student will not have an ELA score. Now, a lot of times you're like, okay, great. I see my scores. You know what? I want to retake it. You know, maybe the first time I took it, I was a little distracted. Maybe my pacing was off, or I have a goal for myself because there's a certain scholarship or certain school that I'm trying to get into or program. So I want to retake it, especially now that super scoring is a thing. And I'll talk about super scoring some more later. So how can I improve Please give me feedback on what I did well and where I can focus, so when I go to retest, I can target that. Well, on their school report, underneath those scores I just showed you, it's going to say detailed results. So this is where we're going to really zoom in and figure that out. So let's take a look at math. And what each of these subjects are broken into what are called reporting categories. So for example, with math, preparing for higher math is the first reporting category. Now, if you'll notice what I have circled, it says 22 of 35. This means that the student got 22 of the 35 questions in this reporting category correct. So that's their raw score. Then if you notice, the raw score is converted to a percentage, 63%. Then you'll notice there's a bar there. And if you notice above the bar, it's a purple and it says ACT readiness range. If that green is within that purple ACT readiness range, if you'll notice to the right, there's a check mark. That means, hey, you are good. Did a great job in that reporting category. Now, if you'll notice, and again, remember there are 60 math questions. 35 of those 60 questions come from this one reporting category. Now, a lot of times like, okay, but what math prepares you for the higher math? Can you please break that down for me? Absolutely. So now you're going to notice those subcategories: number and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry, stats, and probability. So of those 35 questions, how many of those are number and quantity? 5. Notice the student did a great job, got all 5 out of 5. Boom, purple check mark, I'm good there. Algebra, of those 35, 8 of those are algebra questions. You notice the student algebra got 5 of 8. If you notice, their green bar is not within that readiness range and there is not a check mark. So right there might be an area. If I'm looking for a few more questions, I'm going to review some algebra questions there. Functions, 8 of the 35 are functions, 8 of the 35 are geometry, and 6 of the 35 are statistics and probability. The next or second reporting category is integrating essential skills. Now, if you'll notice, 25 of the 60 math questions are integrating essential skills. And I'm going to talk about that one a little bit more in just a minute. And then the third and last reporting category is modeling. And if you'll notice, 22 there. Now, let me talk to you about modeling. All modeling means is that these are questions that are in the context of the real world. So it's not just, here's an equation, solve it, right? It's like, okay, Johnny's at the store, he's buying things because he's going to build this house, you know, those types of like word problems in the real world. So that means that there are some math questions that may count into 2 categories. Let's say it's an algebra question, so it's going to count for that student in algebra, but it's phrased in the real world context, so then it's also going to be in the modeling category as well. So it's what I call a twofer, right? Now let's look at science. If you just want to, I'm just going to pop through. This is kind of what I do with the kids, so I'll do it with you as well. So what a question I would ask the kids is, all right, let's look at science. How many reporting categories do you see? The answer is 3. And then I say, okay, let's look in science. Of those reporting categories, which one has the most weight? Which reporting category has the most questions in it? And students say interpretation of data. Correct. Now let's look at English. How many reporting categories do you see in English? 3. Which reporting category has the most questions? The answer is conventions of standard English. 40 of the 75 questions come from that one reporting category. And then last is reading. How many reporting categories do you see there? 3. Which reporting category has the most weight, the most questions? The answer is key ideas and details. So with some of this, again, you can notice how you can see, okay, which one of these, the green bar is not in the readiness range. Where can I prioritize and maybe hit algebra first and geometry second to get a few more questions? And once I once we dig into integrating essential skills, you're like, oh, maybe I can start with integrating essential skills first if I'm prioritizing my study plan. So what we have online, and Mary has this for you in a PDF format. I believe she's already emailed it to you so that you can have access to the links that I put in this PowerPoint. So looking for those test descriptions, like how many questions, the timing, but also what are the definitions for those reporting categories? What does it mean by modeling? So Nivea, you explained it, but I'm still not 100% with you. Then you can click here and read those reporting categories. So let's pretend that we clicked on math. Because I'm like, I want to know what that integrating essential skills means. Now, if you notice in parentheses, it will tell you, hey, here's the percentage of the test that comes from this one reporting category. So if you notice, 40 to 43% of the math test comes from this one reporting category. Remember, we saw that, right? 25 of the 60 questions. So here's just a brief definition of what this reporting category means. What kind of math is this? So we don't have to read the whole thing, but I would like for you to just eyeball the first line only. And then when I ask the kids, it's like, okay, guys, by what grade do you learn the math that comes from this reporting category? The answer is by 8th grade. So now you're this junior or this senior, you're trying to improve your math score. You might want to look at your integrating essential skills category first and look at that type of math to see, hey, can I get a few more questions correct? Let me start here, and then let me start hitting algebra and geometry and whatnot. Again, if you're prioritizing your study plan. So this was new last year. This is what the kids may see. This is in regards to the reading section. So just 2 slides ago, I showed you all those links for each test. So if you click on reading, scroll to the bottom, you're going to see what I have here for you. And on the reading test, it's called the Visual and Quantitative Information, or VQI, in the reading section. So students are used to seeing graphs and figures and tables, but they're used to seeing that in the science section. Well, what's new now is that students in the reading section, maybe some text, and then there's also going to be a graph, figure, or table along with that text. So again, just that integration of that information into that passage in the graphic, and they're going to determine their best answer. And then it has a link where you can see, okay, well, let me see a sample of this VQI test question that you speak of. Again, that is in the reading. So this is what your students' score report looks like. Let's look on the left, because there's a whole lot going on here. If you look on the left at the tip top with that 21 composite, we have already zoomed in and looked at it. We've also looked at the detailed results at the bottom with the reporting categories, which again helps us when we're ready to retest, kind of prioritize, where the areas of improvement are. Now, if you look over to the right-hand side, we're going to look in a little closer to the college and career planning. So don't worry about trying to see that. I'll blow that for you here in a minute. But I want you to look at what I've circled right here in red. It's in the lower right. It says progress toward the ACT National Career Readiness Certificate. So let me blow that up. So what I like to think of is that the left side is the college readiness information, right? All of my scores, I'm trying to see if I can meet or exceed those benchmarks to be college ready, right? No learning support classes for me. But also remember that there's also career readiness feedback as well. And so what I'm blowing up for you here is showing you an example of that, saying, hey, based on your ACT composite score of that 21, I'm just kind of showing you the correlation that if you were to take the ACT Work Keys assessments and earn your ACT National Career Readiness Certificate, then this is what certificate level that you would be. So if you notice for this student, it says you are making progress toward a gold level on that National Career Readiness Certificate. Here's a college and career planning section that I just showed you. Before taking the ACT's test, your child will fill in some non-test information. There are questions, we call them the inventory questions. Questions about your values, your self-perceived abilities, your interest. What are you interested in? What sort of activities do you like to do? And then we take that information and give them feedback. So for example, this student says, hey, according to your results, from that non-test information, you enjoy working with people and data. Here are some occupations, a few examples for that. So if your student is still undecided about a career, then this will give them some feedback and some direction. So how are our ACT scores used anyway? And a lot of times people think, yeah, college admission. Some schools don't use it for college admission, Nivea, so how else are these scores used? So let's take a look. So before we do, one of the things I like to do is educate the students about super scoring. Because as we know, the students can have an unlimited number of retests. There used to be a cap of 12, but now there's no longer a cap. You can take it as many times as you want to achieve your goals. So I think, hey, how do colleges know which set of ACT composite scores to use if I and everyone else has multiple test scores? And again, this is something to empower you as far as questions to ask of those college admission officers when you look on websites, when you go on campus visits. So one approach that a college could take is, I'm going to take your single highest composite score. You take it 5 times, whichever time of those 5 is the highest, that's the one we're going to take. And the second is super score. Now I'm going to explain what this is because we're going to have an activity. So if you would, have your phones ready because we're going to use your calculator app. Super scoring simply means that if I take the test 5 times, that means I now have 5 sets of English scores. So what I'm going to do if I super score is I'm going to look at those 5 English scores, whichever one is the highest. I'm going to take it. It's like cherry picking. I'm going to take it. I'm going to put it over here to the side. So it's all visualize me taking an English score out, and I'm just going to set it to the side. Then I'm going to look at your 5 sets of math scores, and I'm going to do the same thing. Which one's your highest? Boom. Let's pluck that out of there. Set it over here with that English score. I'm going to do that 2 more times. So now let's take a look at those 4, which are the best of my best for English, math, reading, and science. And now I'm going to compute a whole new composite score. I'm simply going to add those 4 together and divide by 4, and I have a brand new composite of the best of my best. All right, activity time. This is what I do with the kids. Let's pretend that I am MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, and I use the approach of the single highest score. If you notice, I have a child here who took the test 3 times, April, June, and September. Here's the child's English, math, reading, and science score. Notice the composite score for each of those has already been computed. So if I'm an MTSU college admission officer, which of those composite scores am I going to use for this child's admission? The answer is a 22. But what if I'm a college admission officer for UT Knoxville, Vanderbilt, Christian Brothers University, or Rhodes College? Those are just some examples of universities that super score. So now use your calculator app, or heck, you do it in your head. What is this child's super score? All right, let's take a look at how we can figure that out. All right, so if you remember, I talked about going through each subject test and selecting the child's best. So that means let's all look at the English score column. In an English score column, I see a 19, a 22, and a 20. So of those 3 English, which one's the best of this child's best? So I can get it. The answer is 22. All right, math score, what should we select? 23. Reading score, 23. And science, 22. Now take those 4, which is the best of my best, and get a whole new, brand new composite score. That's how you super score. In a student's MyACT account, they will see their super score. It will be calculated for them if they have tested at least twice, of course. And if you'll notice on the left, it says super score. There's the composite, and there's your super score for each individual section of the test. To the right-hand side will be the full battery test or a section test, but that's on hold for right now, showing where that came from. What scores compose or comprise of that super score. So now let's talk about the different ways that ACT scores are used. So again, to empower you with questions to ask, especially if a student is trying to come up with their ACT goals or target. So let's look at the different ways that the composite score is used. College admission, again, that depends on the college. Dual enrollment. So if your child is about to enter high school or is a freshman or a sophomore, and they are interested in dual enrollment classes their junior and or senior year, then they of course are going to want to know, well, which educational institution does my high school partner with? So I can look at their dual enrollment requirements. Do they even require it for admission? If your student is interested in college honors program, so there might be, if they do use it for admission, there might be one score for everyone. However, a different higher score for those who want to enter the honors program. And of course, scholarships. Our state scholarship, and then colleges will have their own scholarships. And I'm going to show you examples of that. Subject scores. So students should pay attention to more than just their composite. They should also look at their individual scores as well, because that is used for college course placement. Again, dual enrollment. If you want to take dual enrollment English, dual enrollment U.S. history, for example, again, the student needs to take a look and say, okay, but what are those scores for that? So I can make sure I go straight into that and no learning support or remedial courses for me. Admission to competitive majors, for example, engineering, nursing. So for example, they're like, hey, I want to get into the engineering program, but in order to do so, your math score should be at least a 25, let's say. College credit or an exemption from a class. And for the athletes, NCAA eligibility. So let's look at a couple of examples. So remember I showed you these are the ACT benchmarks showing I'm college ready. So let's talk about in terms of course placement. So again, questions to ask. So for example, I'm a Tennessee Promise mentor, so I help high school seniors that are wanting to attend a community college or a TCAT. And so I've learned what those benchmarks are because I want my kids to go straight into English comp, go straight into that first year math course. I don't want them to have to take learning support classes. So I have learned what those benchmarks are. So for English, the community colleges also use an 18. The community colleges for math, they use a benchmark of a 19. And then for reading, a benchmark of a 19. And then there's no benchmark for science. So for my Tennessee Promise kids who want to attend a community college, I ask them, okay, what are your ACT scores in English, math, and reading? Because you need at least an 18, 19, or 19, meet or exceed, so you can go straight into those first year courses. Otherwise, you're gonna have to take a learning support class or retake the ACT so you can try to get those scores up. So for example, our state scholarships, the HOPE scholarship, a minimum of at least a 21 on the ACT, but it also says or a minimum of a 3.0 GPA. So they can get that scholarship one of those two ways. There's also a supplemental scholarship called the General Assembly Merit Scholarship. If you notice there, it is tied to the GPA, so there is no or, there's an and. So there's a minimum 3.75 GPA and at least a 29 on the ACT. Here's an example from MTSU. This was effective fall of 2020, so it may have changed. If you know, this is in my example for college scholarships. So if you'll notice with MTSU's scholarships. There's also an and with the GPA. There's not an or. So if you'll notice a trustee scholarship, you have to have at least a 30 on the ACT and a 3.5 GPA for $5,000 a year. And again, you notice their presidential and their True Blue scholarship. This is from Motlow State. As you heard me mention earlier, the community college benchmarks for English was an 18, math and reading a 19. So what happens if a student does not retake the ACT and is below those benchmarks? Here's an example of the learning support classes that they would have to take before taking those first year courses. Or I think now they can take it concurrently or at the same time. But again, when educating the students, I say, hey, let's talk about these learning support classes. That means you're spending time in a class for which you get 0 college credit. And I don't want you taking those extra steps. I don't want that graduation date to be moved because you have these extras. So again, we talk about retesting and what we can do to get above those benchmarks. This is from our TCAT, the Tennessee College of Applied Technology, for my technical kids. There is a required learning support class called Technology Foundations. However, if my tech kids make certain scores on the ACT, then they can be exempt from this class, saving them time. NCAA for the athletes, I've included the link there so you can take a look at it. So if your child is an athlete, it's like, hey, I plan on going to Division I, Division II school, I plan on playing after high school, then they can look and see how ACT scores are used for eligibility. Now, if you look at that third bullet, if you notice, NCAA does not look at the composite score at all. The NCAA looks at the English, math, reading, and science scores. And what they do is they look at your ACT sum score. So they add the scores for those 4 tests, and then they have the sliding scale with the ACT sum scores and GPA from your core classes. So again, I'm going to stop there, and then there's a link there for those who have dreams of playing beyond high school. So I am going to pause there and see if there are any questions based on what I've gone over so far. And Mary, if you can man the chat, because I can't really see it in case anyone puts a question in the chat.
Actually, there was one question that was asked a little bit ago. It's while you were going over the reporting categories. And the question was, do the percentages for example, the integrating essential skills as a percentage of the math test, do those stay about the same from year to year?
The answer to that is yes. Yes, because you saw it was 40 to 43%. And yes, that stays the same every year.
And that's been the only question posted so far. So if anybody else has okay, another one, it just popped up. Is there a reason that it would not be a good idea for a student to take the writing portion of the ACT?
I do not. Again, that's something that I would research and see if a college requires that, or if a program in the college requires that. If they do, take it. If they don't, there's no need to take it.
And I saw a hand go up. I believe it was with Kenosha is the name. I'm trying to pull it off from the email address. So if you want to go ahead and come off from mute and ask your question.
Okay, I'm trying to clarify something. Did you say they could take the test in any order they want to?
No, the order of the test is always the same. It's always
Okay.
English first, then math, break, reading, and then science.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another hand popped up as well, and I also see the questions. I believe it's Mina Wilder, if you want to come off from mute. While we're waiting, another question. Do you know of any colleges in Tennessee that need the writing test?
Ooh, That I do not know. I only, as far as the colleges, go on an as-needed basis. So when it came time for my son, we were just looking at MTSU and a few others not too far away because he's a homebody. So that I don't know.
Do you have any examples of any colleges across the country that require the writing?
Not that I know of, not that I've heard. I know there are some that do, but I just haven't, since I only deal with Tennessee, I just haven't really heard of that.
Okay. Do you, and this might be coming up later in your presentation because I think you go over the study guide materials, but
Yeah.
the best study guides for the ACT, is that coming up later?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We have somebody's asked about a copy of the presentation. If you got signed up prior to this morning, I actually emailed that out as a PDF. And the recording will be on the ACT page of the Metro website, and I'm actually going to show you that as part of my presentation. Somebody can't get logged in because they can't find their ID. What is the recommendation for that into their ACT website? Nivea?
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again. I thought that was a question for you.
Oh no, they're having problems getting signed into their ACT account because they can't find their ID, their ACT ID.
Oh, okay. There should be like a forgot password or something like that to log into their My ACT account. And there's also at the bottom of when you go into your My ACT account where you log in, at the bottom it says need help ? And there's a link that says contact us. So if you aren't able to do it with a forgot password or anything like that, then you can click the contact us and get some help that way.
Okay, and this one from a homeschooled, a parent of a homeschool student. I have a homeschooled student that might enroll back in school before senior year. Does this impact her testing abilities? And I'm not quite clear on that. The student will need to take the ACT to graduate from a Tennessee public school. There are opportunities to take that the state funds. So I don't know if that's addressing your question. If not, please clarify, help us clarify on that. If a child is graduating in 2023 or is graduating early in 2023, when is the best time to take the ACT? Or what if the child prefers to take the Saturday? I'm assuming the Saturday, or prefers to take the SAT. So, Nivea, you can answer that, or I can either way.
Yeah, you want to start first, Mary?
Sure. To graduate, they need to take either the ACT or the SAT. That is the graduation requirement. So if they prefer SAT, that's fine. They can take that. They just need to make certain that this counselor gets the score so that we can have it in the student record. The best time to take it, the student will have the opportunity. The state does fund the student's ability to take the test at least once. So if they're a class of 2023, that means they would be taking it on March 1st. That is the state-funded ACT test date. If they want to take it on a Saturday national test date, Nivea will be covering how to sign up for one of those coming up in the next portion of her presentation. I hope if there's more to that question, please let us know and go ahead and enter that in the chat, or you can come off from mute and ask. For the guests that did not get an email from me, oh, you found it in the spam folder. Okay, great. Yeah, if you got signed up before yesterday, you did not get an email from me, please check your spam folder. I emailed everybody this morning and sent 2 PDFs with that. Last question, and then we'll go on with the next portion of your presentation, Nivea. Do most colleges that accept ACT accept super scores?
Again, that depends on the school. So like my example earlier, MTSU accepts single highest score. Vanderbilt, UTK as examples accept super score. So right now it still just depends on the college. So it'll be a great question to ask your college admission officer.
I'm sorry, I just saw, Kenosha, do you have another question? Is your hand up for one more?
I'm sorry, I didn't have a question. I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay, all right, great. Nivea, back
Yep.
to you again.
All righty. All right, well, my ACT, we were just talking about that. So after a student signs in, and as we just addressed, if they are unable to sign in, they forgot, forgot password doesn't work. Again, at the bottom, it says need help, contact us link. They can speak with a customer care agent to help them get in. But after signing in, this is what they are going to see. This is their landing page. You notice in the middle is their greeting. Welcome, sample. Well, that'll be their first name, actually. Welcome, Amy. Underneath that is the student's ACT ID number. If you notice in the upper left, it says tests and prep, scores, and plans. Now, let's take a look where it says prepare for the ACT. If you notice the big red arrow is pointing to register for the ACT. So if the student is registering for a national test, which is, the Saturday test, then they would click that to register for that national Saturday test. Of course, underneath that, it just shows them several different preparation guides and courses that they can take. Then if you'll notice the big red arrow, right above it in blue says, are you already testing at your school for school day testing? Then if you notice in red, inside it says enter student code. So the student would use that for those 2 state testing events. So the state pays for 2 ACT tests for your child. So in the spring, it is the juniors. And when I was a high school assistant principal and testing coordinators, if I had any early grads, I'd slide them in to that so they can get at least 1 free testing event. Then the second one is in the fall, the senior retake. So right there, your student is getting 2 free ACT testing events. So to help a student with the target, so I'm going to use my own personal example with my son. My son had no idea what he wanted to do for a career, completely undecided. And so I said, okay, well, we're going to have to come up with some sort of career exploration activities where, took advantage of all the things that their school offered to help him figure out what it is that he wants to do. Because when you backward plan, you start with the idea of a career, what I want to do, and then you research what education you need for that career. Do I need to go to TCAT? Do I need trade school? Do I need community college? Do I need 4-year? What do I need? And then I'm going to look at that educational institution and I'm going to research one more time. How do they use ACT scores? And that will then help me come up with my ACT goals or targets that I'm trying to meet or exceed. My ACT is more than just a registration for the national test date or for their school day testing event. It is also a college and career planning tool. So if you notice in the upper left, it says plans. So start here. You're like, yeah, I have no idea what I want to do for a career. Then if you notice where it says take your inventories, and let's kind of look across. Take your inventories, search careers, discover military careers, find majors, explore schools, score explorer, view your summary, and then for more like test prep, if you will, what's the question of the day? And I've also had teachers who created my ACT account because they like to use the question of the day as a bell ringer, as an example. So where to start? Let's start with taking my inventories. So I can see, and once I take my inventories, then I'm going to get, and first of all, let's look at what those inventories are. Here are the 3 that I mentioned earlier. This is also part of the non-test information that they do when they take their junior, and they'll do it again their senior testing events. What are your interests? What are your abilities? What are your values? So that's what the inventories are. And then once they fill that in, then on the career map, it is going to color code and they're going to see where their interests are. And they say, okay, well, what kind of jobs is that? If I'm kind of like in between people and data, I'm going to look at administration, sales, or social service, or business operations. And then you'll notice all those different letters. And it says, hey, roll over that to see. Because if it's in blue, it matches at least one of your inventories. if it's highlighted in red, it matches 2 or more inventories. So help kind of give you some direction on a career you might want to explore, you can start here. Then pop over to the majors map. If you notice, again, once you fill in the inventories, it's going to populate here as far as majors, well, to major in. I don't know any other way to say that. So now let's talk about test prep options, free and then what's paid. So we do have a free ACT test prep webpage with a lot of different options, and I've got a QR code that you can scan with your camera app on your phones to get to that webpage. I'm just going to highlight just a couple of options just to get a feel for what's out there. One is the Preparing for the ACT Test booklet. As you can see that this is free. You can download a full-length practice test. And it also has strategies in there as well. If you're like, ooh, if I'm going to download that whole thing, and again, you can download just the English test and then take the English test, or download the whole thing because you want that full test experience, however way you want to do it. But if you're like, hey, I would like to, because it's a lot of pages, I like to save on some toner and some paper, well then absolutely. Have your child go to the guidance office and talk to a high school counselor. They have those booklets there. Just pick it up for free. Some more in their My ACT account. There are also free online tests within their My ACT account. Again, you don't have to be registering for a test in order to create a My ACT account. I have middle school students who create a My ACT account because they want to take the inventories and go from there, or freshmen and sophomores who want to go ahead and start practicing and they want to access this free online test within My ACT. That's fine. Some more is the question of the day that I showed you earlier, and there are also some sample test questions in there as well. Now, there are also some paid options that you can see surrounding here. Again, I just wanted to point out the free. And again, they can click test. This is on their landing page, but they can also click test and prep in the upper left to access those options. So this is what the free online test looks like. You're going to see some of my scores here. Just know I just went in clicking around just to show you what it looks like. I didn't really score that. So, you know, since this welcome back Nivea, here, if you notice, there is a practice test for each section of the test. And again, if you'll notice, can I take it? And, you know, what if, oh, I got to stop. I got to go to an appointment or whatever. Then you just stop. That's fine. So you notice with math, the blue button there, it says resume the practice test. What if I've taken the whole thing? If you notice, look at English, look at what's in red. I can retake it as many times as I want to. To the right, it shows you my practice test progress. Hey, when did I start it? I can resume. If I finished it, like the science test, I finished it January 15th. My score was a 13, view results. And yes, you see that score correctly for English. It says I made a 1. And yes, I'm a former English teacher. Remember, I was just clicking. No judgment. Okay. So then I go in and I can get even more information. This is my item analysis for that test. So if you notice, I looked at science. There's my score in the upper right. And here's my question number. Here's my answer. I can click the word reveal and it'll tell me what the correct answer is. If you notice, I did not get it correct. And to the far right, there are resources. Now I can up here in the upper right click reveal all answers, but I don't want to do it one by one as well. So when I click on resources, you notice to help me with question number 1, here are 10 helpful resources, videos, etc. that I can use that will help you with that. All right, paid test prep. So for example, there are guides. So the one on the left is the official ACT prep guide. We call it the Big Red Book. So if you're wanting a lot of practice tests, well, that Big Red Book has 5 full-length practice tests. And of course, information on strategies and reporting category descriptions, all of that. But again, 5 full-length practice tests. To the right, these are the official English guide, reading guides. You notice each section of the test has its own guide. So if you're like, you know what, I'm really trying to get that math score and I want to deep dive into math, then I would get the math guide. Now those guides do not have full-length practice tests. That makes sense because I am deep diving into a subject. So what it will give you is thousands of practice questions for that subject. So that's how you can kind of decide, like, okay, what's best for my child right now. Additional online test prep options, and again, these are paid. The one at the top is the official ACT live online class, just like it says and what you can see there. It is live. It's me and a bunch of other kids live with the teacher. We're getting help. The one in the middle is a self-paced course, so it is not live. There are some videos and things. And then the last one is the official ACT tutoring. You're like, hey, you know what? I don't want to be in a group live with a teacher. I want to be just myself, just me and a teacher live. So again, depending on your student, you're like, hey, a student is self-guided. Well, then a self-paced course would work for your child, right? I can work on it when I can, and I don't need anyone to help me. But if you're like my child who needs parental motivation sometimes, then I would have picked one of the others for them. Now, this is not test prep per se, but once I explain what this is, you'll understand why I put it in the test prep category. And this applies to the national test events only. This does not apply to the 2 state testing events. And that is, you can request a copy of your child's test questions and answers. It's called Test Information Release, or TIR. So if you'll notice, when you pay for this, and I'll talk about how much it costs in a minute, you will receive a digital copy of the multiple choice test questions that are used to determine your child's score, get a list of those answers, a copy of your answer document, and the answer key. So now you're kind of seeing like, oh, I see why she put this under test prep, even though it's not test prep per se, right? And if you look at the second paragraph, it says you can access your personal TIR report in My ACT once your test scores are posted online. Now, who is eligible? If you notice that very first bullet, remember it's only available for those who are doing the national testing. Now, there are 7 national test dates. So TIR does not apply to all 7 national test dates. It only applies to 3 very specific national test dates. I'm going to circle it. So if your child tests in the months of December, April, or June, then TIR is available. Now, notice with the red arrow, this service is not offered for any other administrations of the ACT. So all those other months nationally do not apply. The 2 state test events where they test on a school day, those do not apply. Now, under ordering information, well, how much is this? So it says you can order TIR in your web account when you register for $30. Now, if you decide to do it after the test, you can do so up to 6 months after that eligible test date for $40. Now, I will say for my son, I was like, okay, you've taken practice test your freshman and sophomore year, and I know that state school day testing is coming up his junior year. So I'm like, all right, I also want you to have that full test experience, the real deal. So I'm going to sign you up for April. So April of his sophomore year, I signed him up, and I picked April because I knew I could also do TIR. So I paid extra to get that. And so when that came, I'm that mom. I highlighted, because remember my son is needs that parental motivation. So I highlighted all the wrong ones, and I had him go through it and go to the teacher and those sorts of things. So again, you kind of see why I put it under test prep. All right, national test dates and registration fee. Here's a copy of those dates for the rest of this year. If you'll notice, you're like, yeah, I want to do the April, the TIR. So if you notice, April 2nd. Another TIR is June 11th. And then the last one is July 16th. And then it's going to start over again for the new year, 22-23. It'll start again in September. You know, so deadlines, the late deadlines, the deadline for uploading your photo. How much does it cost? The full ACT, no writing, is $63. If you take the ACT with writing, it is $88. So again, I want to remind you that the full ACT test is $63 on a national test date. Remember, your child gets 2 free ACT school day testing events. Fee waivers. This is only available to juniors and seniors only. Your junior or senior, if they are eligible, can get up to 4 ACT fee waivers. So that means that a student who is eligible for an ACT fee waiver for a national test date has 6 times that child can test for free. The 2 state ones plus the 4 fee waivers, 6 times for free. What else do you get with that fee waiver? Not only do you get a free national test date registration, remember that self-paced course I told you that's paid that I just showed you earlier? Well, the students who register with that fee waiver also gets free access to that self-paced course. See your counselor. All right, let's bring this to a close with Students and Parents ACT webpage. I do have the link. There's more there than just test prep. It's like, hey, we have newsletters by senior year, junior year, sophomore year, what you can be doing to get ready for your plan for life after high school. We also have webinars on different topics such as test anxiety, any other topics that you can think of. And in social media, stay connected. Get those reminders about the next test date, etc. So on Facebook, just search ACT student or search ACT parent, Instagram, ACT student, and then Twitter at ACT student to stay connected. All right, questions.
All right, so we had a couple more questions pop up.
Okay.
Do the students already have a My ACT account, or is this something that will eventually be given to them?
All right, great question. So your student can create one now if he or she would like. They're like, yeah, I want to take those inventories. I want to go ahead and explore careers and military, etc. If not, then they will for sure their junior year create a My ACT account because they have to have it in order to participate in that first school day testing their junior year. And of course, if they want to register for a national test date, they will have to create a My ACT account because that's the only way that you can register for the national test date.
And if your child is a junior right now, like this year, the high schools are currently getting their testing materials for the March 1st test, and they'll be getting the students will receive a document for about non-tested items, and that document will direct them to create their My ACT account and then click that button about, do you have an ID number, and then complete some pre-test items. And I will talk about this in a minute. We actually have one of our student ACT prep webinar sessions coming up that will walk the students through what those pre-test items are and how to complete those and complete them accurately. So all of that is coming up with for those students if they are current juniors. A non-ACT question, but it is still a question for you, Nivea. What year did you graduate from Antioch High School?
Oh, you're going to make me tell my age. I graduated, hey, it might be a former classmate. Who knows? I graduated from Atwood High School in 1991. Go Bears.
And I believe you said when you were at Antioch, it was at the old Antioch building, not the new
Blue
building.
Hole Road. Yes, ma'am. Blue Hole Road.
No other questions? Everybody, although you are getting all kinds of kudos here about this awesome session, and I agree, this information is phenomenal. So,
thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
And the person who asked about that, yes, they were looking for being a former classmate. They were a class of 94, had a brother that was a class of 90. So.
Oh, okay. I would say my sister was a class of 93, so who knows? We might know each other.
To do My ACT prep test, do you have to have a My ACT account?
Yes, because that test is within My ACT. They can access it from their landing page or click in the upper left on Tests and Prep.
And I'm going to add on to that, if any of these parents just have this burning desire to take an ACT test themselves, can they create their own My ACT account and do that?
Absolutely, I did.
Lots of thank you for the meeting. This information has totally changed since we as adults were students. Absolutely, it has. Can you pick and choose which ACT scores go to a particular college? This is a great question.
Yes. So when a student fills out their non-test information, the student decides who to send their score report to.
Can they choose which? Yeah, can they choose which? So if they took it 3 times, but they really don't like one set of scores, can they choose to exclude that set of scores from the report, or do all three set of scores go?
If the school accepts super score, colleges will get the super score and every test that made up that super score. So there's no way to exclude that in that case. If the school is a single highest, of course, they're going to choose that one. So the only way is if the student says, hey, I just want to cancel my scores, or, and again, they decide who they want to send it to.
Okay. Other questions? Will this recording be posted so that we can refer back to this information? Absolutely. We've been able to get our recordings, like I just mentioned, we're doing some student webinars as well. We've been getting the recordings up within 24 hours, and you'll see where they are when I get you onto the ACT page. But basically, it's the same page where you went to register for this. We're posting the recordings right there on that ACT page. Will all juniors at MNPS schools be tested on March 1st? Yes, that is a state ACT date, so that's not even MNPS, it's all juniors in the state of Tennessee at public schools. Let me put it that way. All public school juniors in the state of Tennessee. Are ACT scores rounded up or down?
Good question. They are rounded up. So if you add up those 4 scores, like for that super scoring example, if it's a 0.5 or higher, they do round up.
Other questions? Okay, Nivea will be hanging around, and so then if you think of other questions that are more appropriate to her as I'm going through my portion, feel free to post that, and I'm going to answer this question that came up, and then I'll go ahead and start my side. For the juniors, the March 1st date, is that a real test or a practice? That is a real ACT test. Those scores can be used for qualification for scholarships, for admissions to college, for all of these things that Nivea, for NCAA eligibility. It is an actual ACT. All right, so I'm going to shift gears. So as I mentioned at the start, we have people attending from both inside MNPS with students who attend our MNPS managed schools, as well as private schools or charter schools, and even outside of the Davidson County area. This next section I'm going through, this all is available to everybody as well. If you are in a private school, you can click these links that are posted on this Metro site. So what I'm on right now, this is the ACT page on the MNPS website. So this is available to all people wherever. If you have an internet connection, you can get to this page. It's www.mnps.org/ACT. And so as you get onto this page, these boxes that you see here, these are the videos of the webinars that we're doing on Wednesdays for the students. So every Wednesday, when we started back in the first part of January, we're doing 1-hour webinars that focus on a particular element of the ACT. So the first one we did was an overview, and this is a video of that overview. So if your student wants to get just that quick snapshot, they can come in and click on this box and watch that video. And there's actually 4 of them. You just have to click this little arrow. We just did the math one, or I'm sorry, the reading one. We just did the reading one yesterday. We did the math one last week, and we will be adding science next week. This is also where the video of this presentation will be able to be found when we get it uploaded, probably tomorrow. It may be Monday, just kind of depends upon what all else our communications department has going on. But this is where you'll be able to find it. So you just come to this page. Taking the ACT, this is just the intro to the page. And then this is where you came to register. So that should be familiar. To help your students, if they need to get some quick summaries, this is where they can come to register for those webinars I just mentioned. So we have the ones coming up yet for science. This is that one that I just mentioned on the required pretest items. That is on February 16th. Like I said, we do them twice, once at 2:30 in the afternoon and once at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They can pick whichever one best fits into their schedule. If neither one fits, the recording will be available. They can watch it later. All you have to do is click the little plus, and the link to register is right in there. But the other thing too is if they don't want to watch a whole video, they just want to read a quick summary, clicking the box open, that was probably not the best one, this one, reading, if they scroll down, you can see a quick summary of what the video covers, and so they can read through that and kind of get summarized information. And so I tried to get as much information onto this page as I possibly could and make it as useful for both parents and students. One thing that we really didn't mention we haven't mentioned a lot, but we do need to mention is there are accommodations available. If your student is an English learner student, has an IEP, has a 504 plan, and needs some accommodations for whatever their learning needs are, those accommodations are available. And I put the link to be able to access that information about how to get those accommodations right here. It's underneath the section that says IEP 504 and EL accommodations. Students will request that through their My ACT account. I'm sure Nivea mentioned that. I was watching the questions come up and trying to manage that, so I may have missed it. But there's information on the steps for requesting those accommodations, this link right here. Again, trying to keep everything all on this one page so you're not having to look for multiple links in multiple places. Then, as Nivea mentioned, academic preparation is the best preparation for the ACT. And so we went through and identified what are some of those things that if you have younger children coming up and you want them to be on as solid footing as they can be once they get into high school, what is it that we can be doing when they're in elementary school and in middle school so that when they're in high school, there isn't quite as much stress on, oh my goodness, I need to fill in these gaps. And so we have these menu boxes here that will kind of guide you in, okay, I have an elementary school student, like Nivea has a 4th grade bonus daughter. I love that term. So what is it that we need to be doing? We are not going to be talking to 4th graders about their ACT scores. That is not the point of this. But we do need to be talking about their academic skills and their academic preparation. And so what is it that we need to be looking at with these elementary students? Look at what their assessments are telling you. Where are they performing well? What are their strengths that need to be celebrated and built on? And where are there some challenges that we need to be designing interventions and remediations to help them build those skills that are maybe an exceptional challenge for them, or maybe just a minor challenge and just with an extra little, bump or a different approach or a different strategy will help them go, oh, there's that light bulb. Now I understand. And so some of these assessments are ones that you'll want to be reviewing and then talking with your child's teacher about to say, okay, I'm seeing this graph on this report. What is it that I can do at home that will help improve and help them understand this concept? And what is going on at school that is also addressing this so that we can work in tandem to help my child be as prepared as possible for the next step? Because any gap that we can address early, that's a smaller issue than if we wait 2, 3, 4 years, those gaps just tend to widen, and then it makes it more and more challenging the later and later that we go. So these are just some conversations that you can have early. Again, we are not going to talk to elementary school students about, oh my goodness, you're not going to get a 21 on the ACT. That is not appropriate. But we do need to talk about, okay, this concept's a little bit of a challenge. Let's try this with you so maybe we can help improve this area. So just some things you can look at for elementary school. In middle school, when we look at the tested concepts and the tested skills on the ACT, many of them are taught in middle school. They're tested in high school on the ACT, but the actual skills themselves, those foundational skills, are taught in middle school. So we can start having some more intentional conversations with students about how the skills that they're learning in 8th grade, in 7th grade, are then going to build and impact how they can be successful in their high school classes, and then how that can help guide their choices after high school. And so that's when we can still look at these same assessments, these same reports, and see, these are your strengths. These are fabulous. These are things we want to build on. Here's some areas that we want to look at improving, and find some ways to help you improve in these areas. And then if they want to start just familiarizing themselves with what the ACT looks like and what some of the questions look like, these are free resources that they can access. So again, this Preparing for the ACT Guide, this is the document that I emailed to you. They change it every year, so it's available every year, a new version every year. You can download it. I'll change this link so it's the 2022-2023 version for the next school year. But you can download it. It's that same PDF. And then students just can look at what that practice test looks like, look at what some of those questions are asking, and see how similar they are to what's being asked of them in their classes. The college admissions test preparation from the Tennessee Electronic Library Service, again, you can click that link. It'll take you right to where you need to go. That's another place you can get a free practice ACT test if they're interested in it. I would not push a middle school student, but there are some highly motivated middle school students that they really want to do something like this. This is a place that they can go, and it does not cost anything, and they can still have that experience. And then Khan Academy has a series of videos. This overview of the ACT video, or of the ACT, it's a very short video that just kind of gives a broad look at what the ACT is like. So those are some things that middle school students could do that would be appropriate for them if they have an interest. But the biggest thing is we want to build a strong academic foundation. That's the most important thing that we want to focus on with our elementary and middle school students, is building their academic skills just from their course instruction. That's where our focus needs to be, not on ACT prep at that time. When we get into high school, then we can start changing our focus a bit. So early high school is actually 9th and 10th grades. So that's when we can start really looking at, okay, yes, you're in high school, you may be 9th and 10th grade, but even though it seems like a long time to you 9th and 10th graders, after high school, that post-secondary year, those are really just around the corner. So now we need to be looking at, what is it that we need to do to prepare you for those next steps? And so the academic assessments that are, across the board, that all of our students are going to be using, there's a MAP projected proficiency report. They're still doing MAP testing in 9th grade. End of course results will tell them this is how you're performing in these areas, and it does break it down into some standards reporting. There's something called TVAS projected reports. This is something that teachers can get that will tell them if they're projected to achieve that 21 on the ACT, or where are they on that continuum, and where is it that they can improve scores, or if they're exceeding scores and can build on those strengths. And then if a school is offering a pre-ACT 8-9 or a PSAT, then those results could be available as well. This is a school choice. This last one is a school by school choice. So you would need to check with your school to see if they are making those available and if they're going to use those. Currently, it is not a district-wide use of the pre-ACT. It may be in the future, but as of right now, it is a school by school choice. So you will need to check with your school. However, there are all those resources that Nivea went over. I tried to bring in all those links so that you wouldn't have to search all over the place. They're all in one place. So here's that link to that My ACT account that she mentioned. So if you can't remember where to click, just come to the ACT page and click on My ACT account, and then your student can create their My ACT account, do some of those inventories that she mentioned, the career inventory, the aptitude inventories, and kind of start building those, that database, and then also get into those practice tests. Again, the link for the Preparing for the ACT guide. And she mentioned that test information release. I love that option. If you have the $30 or the $40 if you wait, and can get your own results back and your own answers and can go through and analyze it, it just has that much more meaning to understanding, oh, this is why I missed this question. If I had just taken my time, or, oh, I missed a negative sign, and kind of get some insight into how you yourself performed, it just has all the power in the world for the next time that you're taking the test. Some additional resources that are available, again, the same link for the Tennessee Electronic Library System. Khan Academy has another video. I added this on for high school about deciding whether you're going to retake the ACT or not. I didn't put this with 8th grade because, they probably haven't taken it once, so they don't need to decide if they're going to retake it. And then the U.S. Army actually has an ACT prep option available as well, March to Success. And then there are some of our local community organizations that also provide ACT types of support. So the Martha O'Brien Center, the Oasis Center, and then if your student attends one of these schools, Antioch, Cane Ridge, Glencliff, John Overton, Maplewood, Pearlcone, or Stratford STEM, they have a program called Gear Up available to them. It's a federally funded program that supports students in those schools and their college and career readiness preparation. So, all of those resources are available for grades 9 and 10. And again, all on the ACT page, so you don't have to hunt all over the place to find those links. And then later in high school, a lot of the same information. I'm going to scroll down a little bit because all of this earlier stuff was the same, except for there's this one new thing called Mastery Prep. This is where we're going to diverge a bit. This is a resource that's only available to students who attend one of the Metro Nashville Public Schools high schools, so one of our managed schools. So if you're in a private school or if you're in one of the charter schools, this will not apply to you. It's not a resource that's available unless your school itself has purchased the program for their students. But this only applies to our public schools, and I'll get into the Mastery Prep in a minute. But you can see a lot of these same links are also available for the juniors and seniors too. I'll come back to Mastery Prep in a minute. Other than Mastery Prep, everything on this page is free and available to everybody, regardless of what school you attend. Mastery Prep is the only one that is available only to Metro students. So before I launch into Mastery Prep, what questions do we have on what I just showed you on the ACT side? And there's one question that's not necessarily on the website, but Nivea, this may be a good one for you. Can you wait to see what your ACT score is to decide if you want it to go to your schools? How does timing work?
So yes, if you want to wait and see what your score is, the thing is at the time that you register, you can send your score report up to 4 colleges for free. So if you wait till after you get your scores, then you're going to have to pay to send your score report to a college, and it's $16 per score report.
So, and I just noticed we're coming up on 7 o'clock, so we've been going at this for a long time. So I'm going to dive into Mastery Prep just a touch. I'm not going to go through the whole platform, but Mastery Prep is a test prep platform that we have purchased, the district has purchased licenses for all of our juniors and our seniors. Juniors have the full platform and seniors have access to practice tests. I'm going to show you how to get into it and then just kind of show you some of the navigation bar and then you can ask your student to show you, because it has to go through the student side of Schoology. So if you're looking at why are we in Schoology, I'll show you. So to get into Mastery Prep, the students will start on their Schoology page, and this is my Schoology page. And there's these 4 boxes up here in the corner. If they click on this, they will see this true score. And if they click on true score, they'll get a pop-up window. And it will ask if they approve going into this true score authorization. True score is the part of Mastery Prep that we purchase for our students. And it's fine to click approve. What that's saying is that, yes, you can use your Schoology login to log into Mastery Prep as well. So clicking approve is just fine. This does not work on my computer, so it's going to give me an error message. It works for school people. It works for the teachers and the students in a school setting. It does not work for me, so I'm just going to cut that off and just bounce over here to this tab. And once they log in, this is what they'll get. Like Nivea said on hers, she just clicked around. These are my scores for just clicking around. So yes, I got an 8 in science when I just clicked randomly. So she shared her scores, I'm sharing my scores. So this was just me randomly clicking, but your students can go in and do a practice test. They would just click over here in this left navigation. These are 3 practice tests they can do. They are full-length timed practice tests. What it will actually look like if they haven't done a practice test is, I'm going to click on 17B. See, I've done the science. This is when I did the science for real. This is my 25 here. But this is what it looks like when they haven't done anything. They would click start and begin, and then the test will come up. There's the questions, and then here's their answer choices, and it will give you, I set it to untime so I could show you, but the time will show up here, and they can work through all of the questions, and when they're done, it will come up and show them what their score is, and so that's what you saw there. And then once they're done on that, they can go through and look at each of the items, see how they, I'm going to back up and go into the one that I finished. They can go in and see, so I clicked on item, they can see what their answer was, what the correct answer was, and then watch a video about exactly that question to figure out what was correct and how to solve it. And so that is just a small snapshot of the Mastery Prep site, but it is available to every single junior, regardless of whether they're in an ACT prep course or not. Every junior can access it. There are other resources along the left side here too that they can go ahead and click and just kind of navigate through. I just don't want to hold you up because we've already been going at this for an hour and a half, and that's a lot of sitting in front of a computer screen. So this is, like I said, it's available. Juniors have the full platform. Seniors stop at where it says bubble test. None of the rest of these resources are available to seniors. The full platform is for juniors though, because we're trying to get them ready for that spring test. Other than that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What other questions do you have? We are at 2 minutes before 7. We will stay here and answer questions for however long you have them. Yes, you start in Schoology to get into that. There's no logins. They don't need to know passwords. They just start in Schoology with those 4 little boxes, then click True Score, and it takes them straight in. If they have any problems, they can ask. Every school has an ACT lead, which is one of their assistant principals. They can ask the assistant principal for some assistance. Any other questions? Would you like me to do that Schoology, go through it one more time for you? Thank you for coming. We truly appreciate it. Okay, I'll do the Schoology, getting into Mastery Prep one more time through Schoology. If you need to go, that is just fine. Go ahead and have the rest of your evening. Thank you for coming. I'm going to do that, getting into Mastery Prep one more time. So this is your Schoology page, whatever it's going to look like, your child's Schoology page. They find these 4 boxes up here in the top blue navigation bar. Click on those 4 boxes, and this True Score will come up. And they click on True Score. And then when this pop-up box comes, they click Approve. And then after they click Approve, I'm closing mine because it will give you an error. It will pop them into Mastery Prep. Any other question? Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. I will stay here. I'm going to stop the recording, but I will stay here and answer any questions. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.